an affirmation that this recession is abating and the steps we've taken have made a difference. But I also know that we've got a long way to go.
We debate how seriously racist taunts in the playground should be taken.
Kids are instinctively colourblind and they're more ethnically mixed than ever before. In many ways, they can do anti-racism all by themselves.
Later on PM, what would Romeo and Juliet sound like?
That's Janet Davis from the Royal College of Nursing. It's 20 to 9.
40,000 cases of racism a year are being reported in schools. A report out this morning claims children as young as 5 are being punished for making racist insults they don't actually understand. Well, Adrian Hart is the author of the report published by the Manifesto Club, a civil liberties campaign group. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
It's interesting what you say that it's actually counterproductively increasing the divide between white and black children by forcing very young children to see everything in terms of race.
That's right. Well, the first thing to say on this is that we just don't need this kind of top-down official anti-racism in schools. In many ways, kids are instinctively colourblind and more ethnically mixed than ever before. They can do anti-racism all by themselves, but teachers are under government pressure to find racist behaviour that isn't there. And so we end up with absurd examples.
Go on.
Whether it's a 7-year-old in Essex that's called another child chocolate bar, or Bangladeshi kids in East London calling other Bangladeshi kids a monkey. It's all a nonsense. And so I think the problem is that policymakers and official anti-racists are living in a different world. They're living in yesterday's world. Their conception of racism is rooted in the past when it was a problem, or rooted in this modern idea that racism has a hidden presence in all of us. So what I'm saying is that in 2009, none of this is relevant to primary-age kids.
But if a primary-age kid does use the N-word or the P-word or some similarly offensive term, which they can only have learned from their parents, something has to be done about it, doesn't it?
Well, there's no evidence that this all comes from parents. In fact, it's as likely as not that they're just simply picking out the kind of this banter from their peers. It's their usable insults.
Well, no, the N-word...
Well, look, the thing I want to say really is that the playground is a messy place, okay? It's fizzing with friendships, falling out, making up, teasing, banter. Of course they insult each other. They're kids. But it's a travesty. And it's really quite damaging that this world should get interfered with by a policy determined to elevate playground spats into racism. And it's quite dangerous, really, because all this does is make things worse as children start to take on board divisive ideas about race. So you have black kids get the idea that the world's out to get them, and white kids start to feel increasingly resentful. I work in schools. I've worked in primary schools and secondary schools for 12 years now. When I meet some of these kids a few years later, it's like they're carrying the baggage of all this stuff.
How did this start then?
For me...
well, you say it's government pressure and from anti-racist groups. How long has this been going on?
Well, there's been an estimated 250,000 racists since the obligation to report began in 2002. So this kind of flowed out of the Stephen Lawrence inquiry into the Race Relations Amendment Act, and then inappropriately, in my view, then collapsed into the world of children. And I think that's where the problem is. We're muddling the world of adults with the world of children. Don't look to children for racism. That belongs in the adult world. I say leave the kids alone. In more and more primary schools, they're inventing a version of multi-ethnic, multicultural harmony that could teach the adult world a thing or two. So, don't look to children for racism. Let teachers decide if they need to intervene.
At what age should we actually start looking to children for racism if they use racist terms and clearly mean them in that poisonous and derogatory way, the N-word or the P-word? At what age then do children have they eaten of the tree of the very unpleasant knowledge of racism?
Well, look, what I'm saying is that
12, 13,
actual cases of children being racist are extremely rare. Let's trust schools to deal with those.
If a 14-year-old calls somebody, an effing N-word or whatever, or something's got to be done about it.
Well, schools have always had a really good record of showing their authority and demanding moral standards of their kids. What I'm saying is that policy is wrenching their authority and from them, and really it's forcing them to bypass common sense in favour of a zero-tolerance policy. And I think that's a disaster, because it ends up as a prescription for turning kids into victims, as anything anyone feels might be racist gets reported and then cynically used to create this fiction of racist kids, and this idea that somehow government policy is the saviour for all of this.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Adrian Hart, author of the report there, published by the Manifesto Club Civil Liberties Campaign Group. On the subject of the phone-in, the lines are now open for this morning's phone-in, 0500 909 693.